Alrighty, so we're ready to put the case back together. We've got everything cleaned up, oiled all of our bearings. They're all good. Drilled our PTO bearing oil hole bigger. The whole point of taking this case apart. Got that done. Now we're going to put on some new oil seals. Have our Windorosa complete seal and gasket set here. Grab out our two oil seals. Got some marine rated grease. Probably use a few different types of grease, but this is what I had lying around, so I'm gonna go with this. Don't need a whole lot, just get a blob on your finger. Grease up the inside. We'll do both sides. The inside's the one that probably matters the most because it'll be receiving the most heat and combustion forces, but something like that. Slide that on. Same thing for the back. Alright, once you got your oil seals greased up and installed. Alright, so now that we have our oil seals on, all lubed up with the grease, you want to get a little block of wood for each side. I use 2x2s because that's what I had. Whatever you have, just to get your top half case off the ground because you don't want the rods to be hitting into the table. But you need to place your crankshaft into your top half. This is what the repair manual says to do, so we're going to follow it, and then we're going to put our 518 Loctite Anaerobic sealant on the bottom half of the case. See if I can. I'm still running into problems with this rod. There. So you might have to swing one of your rods if you're using a 1.5 inch piece of wood. Would really be better if I had a 4x4 2-inch piece of wood on either side. Or sorry, 3.5 inch tall piece of wood. Because I can rotate this. Make sure your oil seals line up on the outer groove. Your bearing pins should all be on the right side because this is the top half of the case. If you remember when we took the cases apart, the bearing pins were all sitting on the left side of the bottom half. Since this is the top half, you want the pins on the right side, so just give it a little upward tug, and then you should be able to spin your bearings over. So the little pins are all resting on the right side of the case. The way that you can feel good about knowing you did it the right way is that the case has nice little indents for your bearing pins to sit in. So that's exactly what those are for, all along the way. So, alright, so the crankshaft is in the top half of the case, ready to rock and roll. Now we're going to take our manufacturer repair manual recommended Loctite 518 anaerobic sealant and lay down a nice thin layer around the top of the case. Give it one last wipe down with our trusty paper towel. Good old blow of compressed air. Blow some of the good old particles back into the block we took a long time to clean out. It's always good. Alright, here we go. Thought I just had to cut that doohickey, but oh, there it comes. Just a bit glued in there. Oh, there we go. Oh, now I see my problem. I also have to cut this tip. I didn't realize there's two tip-a-maroos on this. Stuff's more like the consistency of Jello than that nasty Permatex garbage. I'm glad I spent the big bucks for the 518er. I like the look of this better. I mean, who doesn't like strawberry jelly? The other beautiful thing about this is it's anaerobic. So unlike that Permatex goo trash I just mentioned, which you have to seal down and then wait for an hour or even a day, depending on what you want to do before you come torque it. Yeah, I think you would put it on, wait an hour, then torque it, and then you can use it for 24 hours. This beautiful stuff, you can torque right away, and that actually starts the setting process. Right now it's not doing anything. Just hanging out like good strawberry jello. But once you remove its exposure to oxygen by torquing down the case, then it actually starts to set. So pretty genius stuff, I must admit. I stopped here because there's so much gooped up right there. I just want to make sure we don't overdo it, because we're going to need this for the cylinder case as well. So I'm just going to use my good old finger and spread out the jello. Alright, once you've successfully jellified your case, we will bring over the top Mac Daddy, kiss these two together. Sure does look like red jello, if only it smelled like it. Alright. The other obvious reason that yours truly, mechanical genius, figured out for putting the goop on the bottom and then placing down onto the top. Is that the bolts have to go in from this side down, so that helps gravity take the goo downwards. Nothing to it but to do it. Drop her on. Oh, you hear that jello just squirting right in there? Sounds nice. Give a little visual inspection. Make sure everyone's kissing happy. Seems we have a little hang up over here on the right side. Oh, there we go. This thing needs a little bolt persuasion. Alright, then we'll go ahead and drop our bolts in. So that's going to be your bolt arrangement. So your middles should be 14 total, 7 sets of 2, 6 smaller ones, and then 2 of your medium length. So just like they're placed, the 2 medium length here, 14 middles, and then your 6 smaller ones are going to go in these side things. So anyways, you can watch where I stick them in as I go, but just wanted to give you that overview. Something to note, there's actually 2 bolts that look like the others because they have the non-threaded section and they're almost just as long, but if you look closely, they're about a centimeter shorter. These 2 that look like that go on the very end, the PTO clutch side, and the last 2 holes there. So you're going to find out, because if you're doing what I did, which is thinking they're all the same, you're going to try to drive this sucker into that hole and it's going to be sticking out with no more room to go any deeper. And so that's how I figured out my mistake. But anyways, make note of that. I'm just going to put them all in by hand, and then we will give them a McTorque with the McTorque wrench in a second. Let me back those out before I get ahead of myself. So you actually want to start in the middle, I just thought of, and then work your way out. So I do have the crank diagram, the torque pattern, which I'll be referring to. Once we start cranking away, but right now, since we're not cranking away, we're just getting them in there. I don't think it's too important, but wouldn't hurt just to follow the sequence anyway. Alright, we got a torque wrench set to 18 foot-pounds. We're going to follow the schedule Polaris laid out. I can tell it might be a little rocky, so hang on to your seatbelts. Should say fasten your seatbelts. Hang on to the motor. Alright, I'm going to put our motor mounts back on. So you want to make sure your oil pump is facing away from these bushings. So basically picture the oil gear pump goes in here, oil pump gear, and that's toward the driver's side. So if this was to be flipped up, these would be sitting like this, and so as it is, they're going to be like this. You just want these bushings away from your oil pump gear. Torque specs for these is 25 foot-pounds. But this one doesn't seem too happy. We just need a little wiggly. Torque wrench, 25 foot-pounds. Torque wrench set to 25 footies. Looks like our little impactor already drove them in more than 25, so we'll call it good.